Primetime Deion Sanders could be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I'll tell you why I think it's a downgrade on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today as I am every Tuesday by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to look ahead to the divisional round. Then we are going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings choking like absolute dogs on Monday Night Football against the Rams. But we got to start with the drama in Dallas. Before we get into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Lauren, the Cowboys make the big move and decide to let Mike McCarthy go.
Now it feels like it's got to be prime time in Dallas next, right?
Is it prime time? We'll go to my guy, Landon McCool from Locked On Cowboys to break down the big news.
Breaking news from the Dallas Cowboys as they appear to be on their way to allowing Mike McCarthy to leave in free agency. Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and despite their posture all offseason where it seemed like the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy were willing to work out a deal to kind of continue the relationship to see if they could give him one more bite at the apple, it appears that the Cowboys and the front office could not come to an agreement with Mike McCarthy on the terms of the length of the deal, potentially even some money situations. So the Cowboys will now start their coaching search anew and fresh as Mike McCarthy is set to become a free agent on Tuesday. We've heard that the New Orleans Saints might be a destination for him. Chicago Bears may want to interview him, so as they obviously requested an interview with Mike McCarthy earlier in the week. So there's lots of information there. And for the Cowboys, we're going to have a little bit of a wait and see. There will be some names that will float up. Make sure you check us out on the Locked On Cowboys podcast for all those names and all the information amongst the Cowboys coaching search.
For the last few months, Lauren, I have been pushing the narrative that I think the Cowboys should keep Mike McCarthy. I don't think they should let him go. Now, are there better coaches in the NFL than Mike McCarthy? Absolutely sure. I think we saw two of them on display on Monday Night Football. But I think that what happens in today's society, Lauren, and I see this a lot with quarterbacks, is you're either great or you're a bum. There is no middle class. And I feel like that is how analysis is. Nowadays, you're great or you're terrible. And the reality is most people are in the middle. And a lot of people are just good, not great. And I think Mike McCarthy is a good head coach. And as somebody who obviously covers the Chicago Bears, who have been rumored to be heavily interested in Mike McCarthy, I think that Dallas should have given him another chance. I don't think that they're going to find a better option out there on the market, including Deion Sanders, who we'll talk about in just a moment. But from Mike McCarthy's perspective, what are your thoughts on him as a coach?
Yeah, I think I see Mike McCarthy, and I've been talking about this a lot for the Bears now, he's kind of a cute, he's a head coach purgatory a little bit for me. He is in that middle class where it's like, I think with Green Bay, right, underachieved with Aaron Rodgers, and by the end, Packers fans were like, we want more, we want a higher ceiling with our coach. And I think Dallas is feeling in a similar boat where it's like, okay, like, yeah, they go 12-5 for 3 years in a row, but they never get anywhere with it. And at some point, it's like, we want to aim higher for our coach and try and get somebody who's not just going to get us to the wild card or the divisional round, but a coach who you feel like gives us an advantage to go to the championship game and maybe the Super Bowl. And just didn't feel like Mike McCarthy's been able to do that enough.
Yeah, well, it's been, quite some time since Mike McCarthy was able to accomplish that. So it's fair to look at that and say, I guess I just look at it situationally. And I feel like if you're a team that wants to win right now and you just need some stabilization, like a Ben Johnson is going to be a first-time head coach, and he may grow into one of these Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur type offensive innovators. But that's also taking a risk. And I think specifically, maybe we'll talk about Chicago next week when we don't have games to talk about and everything, and if they've made a move by then. But I think if you're the Chicago Bears and you just need a solid, good coach to stabilize your franchise, help Caleb Williams. I guess I just think Dallas is doing a grass is always greener. And I think Mike McCarthy is a good, solid, middle of the road NFL head coach.
I think we're reading it the same way. I think we're not reading the Bears the same way a little bit in there. Like I think
that's true.
Only in the sense that like I think of as the Bears as a team that's like ready to take that jump to the next level. Like,
yes.
Yeah, they need a culture improvement here, but like with Caleb Williams is like this, you're trying to hit a Super Bowl window right now. And I think of McCarthy as the team that takes you from being where the Raiders are, where you're just like, you're really a mess. And you just need to get back to like, can we string together some winning seasons and like fix something here? Whereas like the Bears feel like, man, if you get Ben Johnson or the right coach in there, you can be in the divisional round next year. Like you can really kind of take that jump. And McCarthy doesn't feel like the coach, like, I want to jump higher than where Mike McCarthy's going to jump me to.
Well, I think if you're the Chicago Bears right now, you want to jump anywhere that's going up. So you don't want to try to overextend, but we'll have our discussion on the Bears. I do want to talk about Deion Sanders here because during the Monday night game, and thank God the NFL made the call. They said this game is boring. We need some NFL news to get the people going. And we get that the Dallas Cowboys and Colorado football coach, PRIMETIME, the Hall of Famer, Deion Sanders, have had contact. Now, at this time, there's been no interview officially scheduled. Deion Sanders did make a statement saying that, he's truly delighted and it's intriguing to hear from Jerry Jones. He loves Jerry Jones. He's got to think about it, but he said he does love Boulder, Colorado, and everything about his team there. Do you think that Deion Sanders would seriously make this move? And do you think it would improve the Dallas Cowboys?
I do think it's a move that Deion Sanders is going to be interested in and strongly consider here. Like
he should be. Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously would be a huge move for his career. And he should have, if any NFL team is willing to give him a good opportunity like this, I think you should consider it. And of course, all the storylines of Dallas and all the connections there, of course, would be a lot of fun. Whether that makes the Cowboys a lot better is a different question. And that's not always Jerry Jones's motivation, right? Jerry Jones' motivation is attention and storylines. And Deion Sanders is a lot less boring than Mike McCarthy. Like that's more why they fired Mike McCarthy. He was a little bit too boring. Jason Garrett was too boring. Deion Sanders would be the opposite of that. And that's what Jerry Jones wants.
Well, I think Jerry Jones is at a point in his life right now where they've tried everything they can to make the team a competitor and it's failed. So he may be at a place where, hey, I mean, not to be morbid or anything, but Jerry Jones is an older man. Like you at some point in time start to think about your mortality. And I want to enjoy these years and I want to be exciting and I want people talking about the Cowboys. If we're not going to be a Super Bowl contender like I've tried, then let's at least be interesting. I think that is maybe not the way you want your owner thinking, but I think that's a lot of way that people do think. And I agree with you. Deion Sanders would definitely accomplish that. Now the question becomes, he said in an interview recently, Deion Sanders, that he would consider coaching an NFL team if they wanted to draft his son. The Cowboys have the 12th pick. Would you consider paying the $8 million to buy out Deion Sanders from Colorado, trading whatever it took with the Tennessee Titans to get up to number 1 to get Shedeur Sanders and eat $100 million dead cap for Dak Prescott because you'd have to get rid of him to replace him with a rookie? I don't think the Cowboys are doing all that, and I think Deion Sanders may just be trying to get some more money out of Colorado.
But is there a trump card here where it's like maybe the Cowboys don't have to trade up? Maybe Deion Sanders says Shedeur will not play for any other team but the Cowboys, so don't draft him. Like that would be the win-win because they can get Shedeur, and Jerry Jones would love all the controversy that brings too. Everyone's happy.
Oh my God. Yep. Absolutely. It would bring so much conversation around the Cowboys too. I think that would be, he would get a double dose of what he was looking for. And that might be exactly what he wants. Great point there, Lauren. But with that being said, we will get to this Monday night football game. And I don't know if I've ever seen somebody lose as much money in real time as we saw with Sam Darnold. Today's episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only on the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about all of the news coming out of Dallas with the Cowboys head coaching situation. Be curious to see where Mike McCarthy goes next, and be curious to see where the Dallas Cowboys go next as well. You know, Jerry Jones saw Mike Vrabel's press conference at New England and said, I got to get me some of that. I got to get me some of that homecoming sauce. But anyways, moving right along. The Los Angeles Rams dismantled the Minnesota Vikings. It was ugly. And my guy Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings gave the cold, hard truth.
Well, it ends with a whimper. 14-3 Minnesota Vikings going to Arizona to play the LA Rams, which is weird to begin with. They lose 27-9, and that greatly undersells how bad it was. What's up, everybody? I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings, and the Vikings got absolutely torched by a much better LA Rams team. They were smarter, they were stronger, they were faster, they were better. There's no mincing words about it. So we'll go on Locked On Vikings. We'll eulogize the season. I'm about to go live here on the postcast. But there's a reason that I'm wearing the J.J. McCarthy winter whiteout jersey today, because the future is still in Minnesota. And as horrible as Sam Darnold was, there's no reason to keep him. The Vikings don't want to buy back into that. They don't have to, because they've got a rookie in the building. They got to still rebuild the rest of their QB room and rebuild their O-line and rebuild their secondary and maybe rebuild a lot of their defensive line. There's a lot of work to do, but that's what Locked On Vikings is for all offseason long. I'll see you there.
I mean, for Luke, who has been championing Sam Darnold all year long and talking about how real what the Vikings were doing is, for them to completely fall apart in these last 2 weeks, it's one of those things that sadly it confirms everything that everyone thinks about Sam Darnold, even though he did play much better this year. But I think the reality is right in front of us. Sam Darnold is not a franchise quarterback. The Vikings should not have changed their plan now based on what Sam Darnold has done this year. And what I find more or maybe not interesting, but more surprising is not Sam Darnold coming back down to earth. It's how bad the rest of the Vikings look. That offensive line got completely dominated. They didn't make any big plays on the outside for most of the game. That defense did not make an impact whatsoever. I don't think the Rams had a great offensive game by any means, but the Vikings defense didn't make any huge fundamental plays in the game. And I'm more shocked by the failure of the other things around Sam Darnold than I necessarily am Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think Darnold's taking a lot of the meat shield here from the criticism that and we'll also, I'm sure we'll get around to Brian Flores, like the last 2 weeks in a row. Got pantsed by Ben Johnson and the Lions, and now Sean McVay really seemed to figure out this Vikings defense. Like, yeah, they'd been so good for so long, but there's a lot of serious questions about him now as a head coach candidate. And I think Kevin O'Connell deserves some real criticism here too. Like, yeah, Sam Darnold was bad, but like, if Kevin O'Connell is going to be one of these, bright genius offensive-minded head coaches, like, where were the adjustments? Where we're getting, more plays to get rid of the ball more quickly, more screens? Like, they were still running some of these under center play action plays where the pass rush would get home to Darnold. And I think I saw like 7 of the 8 sacks or whatever it was were
9 sacks.
Like, it wasn't like the Rams were blitzing and overloading you. Like, you're a great offensive coach. Come up with some better options for your quarterback so he doesn't look like a deer in headlights.
Yeah, they weren't doing much to help Sam Darnold out there, but I also think some of the things that typically worked just didn't work. And I hate to go back to this because it's such like a little football pop culture thing that's easy to bring up, but it really did make me think of the "I'm seeing ghosts" quote, like halfway through the game. And listen, you're taking that much heat, most quarterbacks are going to start to feel fake pressure. They're going to start to see the ghosts out there. Like, that's just natural. Not every quarterback is Joe Burrow, who can take the 9 sacks and win the game. There's been 9 sacks in a playoff game 5 times in NFL history. Joe Burrow won. He won. We saw what the game looked like tonight, and Joe Burrow won that game. Man, the Tennessee Titans are a clown franchise. But with that being said, they were the team who did it last, and they lost the game. Unbelievable. But anyways, moving right along, I guess I want to give Sam Darnold a little bit. The Vikings offensive line completely crumbled too. Now, Darnold, at one point in time, they had like 6 sacks, and his pressure to sack percentage was 70%, which that's almost double like the worst in the NFL this year, which is usually like around like 44, 45% is like Will Levis and Justin Fields and players like that are, terrible in the pocket. So I was surprised by how bad Darnold was in the pocket, but the offensive line being worse than I've seen it all year long, I think I give Sam Darnold at least a smidgen of credit. I want to ask you this, Lauren. How much, if Darnold was set to get $40 to $50 million, which maybe you disagree with that premise, but if we go back a month ago, I think some people are thinking, 2 to 3 years, probably 2 years guaranteed, $40 to $50 million, which seems to be just average starting rate now for starting quarterbacks in the NFL. How much money do you think he's lost from the last 2 weeks that we've seen? Do you think he's in the 20 million, 30 million range now?
Yeah, it's tricky because it's like he played so well for, 15 plus games this season. There were mistakes along the way. So like, does 2 bad games mean he's a terrible quarterback again? No. I mean, he's not New York Jets Sam Darnold, but he's not, like you said, not franchise quarterback Sam Darnold either. So he's falling in this kind of tricky area here where he's like
Carolina Panthers Sam Darnold.
Yeah, well, I just mean like salary wise, where it's like we don't really have a middle class of QBs. Everyone's either in the $45+ million or you're way farther down. Like Geno's at 25 million. Like that's kind of the most recent example, but he feels maybe a little bit. All it takes is one desperate team that's going to be willing to pay him that much. But if you go through free agency and everyone is kind of like meh, then that's how Ryan Tannehill goes unsigned for so long too. So I think it definitely cost him a significant amount of money and. It's just going to depend on if any of these suitors get desperate enough because it's not a strong draft class for quarterbacks in terms of depth of that class either. So maybe one desperate Raiders or Jets team or whatever it's going to be will say, all right, 40 million, that's not too bad.
Desperate for a quarterback, stupid, more money than they know what to do with. Is that the Tennessee Titans music? Oh, here we go. Brian Callahan can't wait for a boring quarterback like Sam Darnold. But listen, I think that you make a good point with the Geno Smith contract. I think guys like Geno Smith, Derek Carr, that's where Sam Darnold is right now. So I think 3 years, $25 million a season, maybe $50 million guaranteed, $40 million guaranteed, something like that, where it's basically you get a year, maybe a second year. I think that does still make sense for Sam Darnold, but I think getting $40 to $50 million to be somebody's like, oh, Sam Darnold is our franchise quarterback. Nobody's going to do that now. And I get what you're saying that, 2 games shouldn't erase 15 other games, but they were the 2 biggest, highest stakes games that he played all year. And he looked like that. So I think that has to have a bigger impact than maybe 2 out of 17, 2 out of 18 would typically have. But with that being said, the Los Angeles Rams move on. And they are underdogs against the Philadelphia Eagles. Which underdog in the divisional round has the best chance to get an upset? Lauren and I are going to rank those teams. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and the excitement were unforgettable, and the ticket buying experience on Game Time was unforgettable as well. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with a new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming event using the Game Time app, and with the Game Time Picks feature, I found amazing deals, and I could even get a view from my seat before buying. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Lauren, let's continue and cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the drama in Dallas. We talked about the Vikings choke job against the Rams. Now I kind of want to look ahead to the divisional round here. We have the Buffalo Bills against the Baltimore Ravens. We have the Houston Texans against the Kansas City Chiefs. We have the Los Angeles Rams against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then we have the Washington Commanders against the Detroit Lions. Hoping for some better games next weekend. I think the divisional round of the playoffs, the final 8 teams, is usually the best football that we see all year in terms of the talent level and the quality of play and all of that. But looking at those 4 matchups, Lauren, I think both of us agree that if we had to pick an underdog that's most likely to get an upset, you have to go with the Buffalo Bills. They're plus 1.5. They're at home. They're still underdogs, but they're at home to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Josh Allen had a great game. And one of the reasons that he had such a great game against Denver is dealing with the blitz. And my guy, Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, broke down that.
And really, I thought the offensive success for the Bills was rooted in 3 things. Number 1, handling the blitz and pressure. We know that Denver's been a very good pressure team, very good blitz team. The Bills' vertical passing game. And then, of course, the run game that was really dominant in this football game. And so, of course, what I want to do is ask the question, well, why were those things so good for the Bills? And so, starting with handling the blitz, handling pressure looks, Josh was terrific. The Broncos blitzed him a ton, just like they blitzed every quarterback, 38% of the time in this game. Josh Allen was 10 of 12, 141 yards and a touchdown against the blitz. He had an EPA per dropback of plus 0.85. For the season, opposing quarterbacks against Denver's blitz have minus 0.09 expected points added per dropback. Josh was at plus 0.85, and Josh has been great against the blitz all year. I'm not surprised that he was so good against the blitz on Sunday.
Well, the Ravens aren't going to be surprised by it either, but the Ravens don't blitz, Lauren. The Ravens blitz in the bottom 8 in the NFL, and Buffalo was able to run the ball very, very well, but Baltimore had the best run defense in the NFL this year, giving up only 80 yards per game. Second place was Minnesota, giving up 93 yards per game. So there is a massive, massive chasm between the first place Ravens and the second place Minnesota Vikings. So what I'm really saying is, Lauren, we could say that Buffalo has the best chance for an upset, but the numbers don't give them an incredible chance, and I think that's why they're underdogs at home.
Yeah, I think this is the 2 most evenly matched teams, right? And that's why they have the best chance for the upset. Like, for me, the winner of this game is going to the Super Bowl in the AFC. I think either of these teams can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It'll be a good AFC championship game, but like, this to me is like the game of the postseason here. And I'm not putting anything past Josh Allen, and I still think Lamar Jackson has some to prove here in the playoffs. For again, when a team like Josh Allen is going to score more than 14 points, the pressure is going to be on Lamar Jackson to kind of step up and play. So that's where Buffalo looms really large for me in the AFC. I don't really trust the Texans that much to pull off a big upset over the Chiefs. I think the more compelling arguments there are in the NFC, where it's like, if you're going for an underdog, the Rams over the Eagles or the Commanders over the Lions, those are both going to be tough tasks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll be honest with you, Lauren. I think if I had to give my number 2, it is the Houston Texans. And really? I think the main reason is the offensive line of Kansas City cannot be trusted. And the one thing that Houston has right now that is certifiably special is their pass rush group with Danico Autry and Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, and they had Derek Barnett in there. Like, they have so many guys on the defensive line that if Houston were able to, think about what the Rams did tonight to the Vikings. If the Houston defensive line was able to dominate the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line in that way, I think that the Texans would have the opportunity to pull an upset, and maybe all of these things that we've been worried about with the Chiefs all year come home. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not picking Houston to win the game, but if we're ranking our upset potential, I'll go Buffalo number 1 just because of what we talked about, but I'll go Houston number 2, and then I'll follow that up with the Rams over the Eagles and the Commanders finally over the Lions.
See, I don't trust Houston's offensive line very much either. And so
Right.
if I don't trust Kansas City's O-line and I don't trust Houston's O-line, I trust Patrick Mahomes with a worse O-line more than I trust CJ Stroud with a worse O-line. Like, certainly, I think it'll be a good game also, but that one's a little tougher to me. I think there's something about the Rams in the NFC that, for as well as they played against a good Minnesota Vikings team, I know the Vikings have fallen apart the last 2 weeks, but like that was an impressive demolition by the Rams for a team that has a lot of playoff experience, but then the young guys are stepping up and playing well. Like, if I'm the Eagles, I'm sweating a bit more than I am if I'm the Lions for the Commanders, who are also a strong team, but I feel like the Commanders are more likely to kind of hit that, like, okay, this was a fun little run, but the Lions are here to take care of business. The Eagles could prove to be frauds just as easily, and the Lions could be in the NFC Championship, or excuse me, the Rams could be in the NFC Championship game once again.
Yeah, I think you're right. Here's where I get concerned. The Eagles' offensive line is significantly better than the Vikings' offensive line. And then the Eagles' defense, I think, is significantly better than the Rams' defense. So I think the matchup makes it difficult because the Eagles are going to still have that great defensive performance. But I think the offensive line of the Eagles neutralizes how good the Rams' defense is. So I guess I just think it's going to be tough. I have been high on the Rams making a run for a while now, like a month now. I've been kind of hyping them up. But I think right now, and I reserve the right to change my mind, people, but I think right now, I might be picking Philadelphia to cover in this game. Something about it, I just feel like, going across the country with all the stuff going on in Los Angeles, like eventually that takes its toll on the mind and the body. It's a Monday night game, so they're already on a short week. Like, I worry. My instinct was to go to Rams, but when I start thinking about it, I guess I'm worried a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the Eagles are going to win. I think they're the favorite for a reason. There,
True.
If I want to take a swing on an underdog here to be like, man, who can pull off that upset? Like, Washington's been fun, but I think even with an injured Detroit Lions defense, like I think Detroit's just still too talented and too experienced in all this. Whereas, like, the Rams have that veteran sort of savvy to a lot of the way that certainly offensively that they operate things, where it's like they wouldn't surprise me as much as like if the Commanders beat the Lions, that would be a huge surprise.
Shock.
Whereas if the Rams beat the Eagles, it'd be a big surprise, but not like, oh my God, who would have thought the Rams would be good in the playoffs?
Exactly.
That's a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I think I agree that I have Washington last on my list, but that defense for the Lions, if Jaden Daniels goes crazy, like I think there's potential there for Jaden Daniels would have to literally go insane, but maybe he can. Maybe that's something that he can do. We will see. Either way, again, hoping for better games, closer games, more exciting games at the finish next week. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. Check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins, the barber himself in the barber shop. That's going to do it for me, your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, and my co-host, Lauren Cox. And as I tell you every episode, stay safe out there.